Welcome to Load the Box. I'm fired up. I've been thinking about this show most of the day, and season. It's definitely off season right now. We've sort of been in this off season mode since really the Super Bowl ended, and for the Vikings since Week 18 ended. But I feel like right now we're definitely in off season mode. We're in this dead period between minicamp and OTAs, and training camp doesn't start for another 6 weeks, and it's filler time, but I think there's a lot to talk about. And to do so, we brought on our favorite guest, Dustin Baker from VikingsTerritory.com, Vikes Now, Believe in Vikings, all the other Vikings things on the socials. Dustin is here to break it down with us. Jordan, you're here too. Hi. I want to give you a shout out as well. Let's talk some ball. So, Dustin, I think probably the first thing I wanted to start with, sort of high level, right? It's off season time. We're getting ready for training camp. What do you view at this point as maybe the most noteworthy acquisition or addition to the team, or simply transaction that was made between the start of free agency and today, June 18th?
Absolutely. So let's note that this offseason was stuffed to the gills with change between UDFAs, free agents, and rookies. There are over 40 new players. So this competitive rebuild that we were told may have not have happened at the pace that everybody wanted, i.e. just code for Kirk Cousins. But the thing happened. And if JJ Carthy is as good as Cousins or better, then the rebuild will have been worth it. So in terms of my favorite acquisition, I think it's too easy to say drafting the quarterback of the future. That is, that's what I've wanted. I wanted them to draft C.J. Stroud somehow last year, but he went too high. I wanted them to groom a guy, and now they're going to do it. So let's get that obvious part out of the way. I love that they were able to also get Dallas Turner, even though he was like god-awful expensive for draft capital. So I have kind of a weird one. My favorite move of the offseason was Andrew Van Ginkel, and I have a reason for it, believe it or not. I was wrong, foremost. I thought Danielle Hunter would be back because the Vikings didn't trade him when they were 1-4 last October. Danielle Hunter said about 4 different times, I want to be a Viking for life. All of those clues told me this guy's going to be back. And one thing about Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell is they rarely lie or mislead the public. They're pretty straightforward. When they say they're going to do something, they do it. So I thought Hunter was going to be back. Then he didn't. He didn't come back. He went to his hometown Houston Texans. What I loved about the Andrew Van Ginkel move is we went from, for me, subtle paranoia, like, all right, Marcus Davenport's gone, DJ Wanham's gone, Daniel Hunter's gone, we don't have any edge rushers. Now, 3 months after that, it's one of the team's strengths, and we have to wonder, oh my God, is Patrick Jones going to get cut? Is Andre Carter going to get cut? And bringing, although I guess he's a little bit injured right now, Andrew Van Ginkel on for 2 years and $20 million, I love the depth there, because we are used to having Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin, or Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith, or Danielle Hunter last year and a little bit of Marcus Davenport. It's always a two-man show. Now it is a complete conglomeration. We think Dallas Turner will be on the field week 1. We hope. Jonathan Greenard is basically Danielle Hunter reincarnated. May not be quite as good, but he also stops the run like Hunter. So the cake topper for me was Van Ginkel, even before we knew we could get Dallas Turner, because we have edge depth, and we're not used to that. We really aren't. It's usually Jared Allen, Ryan Robinson. We don't usually have 5 decent edge rushers and going into a summer with, oh my God, who's going to get cut? Because somebody's going to get cut from that edge room that we know and love. Now, to the general public, they're not going to care if Andre Carter doesn't make the team. But for me, he was the cool UDFA last year. So simply because it felt like gravy when the plan played out, Andrew Van Ginkel was my favorite signing because we have edge depth, and that's what Super Bowl contending teams generally have.
Yeah, I think the ability to sub into those like speed rush packages on second and long, third and long, and you tell the big guy, the big nose tackle, the run stuffer, you say sit a couple plays out because we did get, we stuffed the run on first down. Now we know they have to throw. Let's go to the speed package. Let's get all the pass rushers in. Let's get Van Ginkel. Let's get Goodnow. Let's get Dallas Turner mismatched on a guard. Stunt him around and attack the center. You can start being really fun and creative with the line. I will say one thing Vikings fans do expect, and we are very accustomed to, is having an elite pass rush, even if there's not depth there. You know, like you started naming the names, and you know, Buab and Griffin and Hunter, and you know, it's kind of Jared Allen, and you know, I think was it Allen and Buab, or there was Ray Edwards, I think, was in there. Like very good duos on the edges. And I think we saw the Vikings defensive collapse really started when Everson, I don't want to say went off the rails because I don't want to make light of his situations. I know he just got into some legal trouble again, and it's a whole thing. But when Everson became not dominant Everson Griffin and left the team, that's when we started seeing the defense start to go. And we were like, well, oh my gosh, what's going on? You know, we still have great linebackers. We still have like Linval stuffing up the middle, and we still have some decent corners and Harrison Smith, and you know, like Anthony Harris was playing good. And why is the defense struggling so much? And I think it does come down to, you know, corners can only cover for so long. I think the league is shifting to this idea of like get 2 or 3 average defensive backs and get some really, really good pass rushers and get guys that can, I mean, you know, like Eli Apple has played for some really good teams and he stinks. And he's like been a high caliber starter for several like playoff contenders. And he went to a Super Bowl with Cincinnati a couple years ago. So I think you're seeing this. Hey, maybe I don't think you need a Revis Island or a Sauce Gardner or something like that. They're nice to have, but I would much rather have the edge rusher depth than, you know, have went out and drafted like a Talion Arnold or the guy from Akron whose name is escaping me. You know,
Quinion Mitchell.
Thank you, Quinion Mitchell. So I'm really happy with what you've brought up there. I think that's something to be excited for and to look forward to.
I'm not going to pile on too much on this because we have lots of topics, but I love what you brought up, Dustin, because I think it is this approach of not trying to replace an elite player in Danielle Hunter 1-for-1. And I think the Vikings got it right in that they brought in multiple guys, 3 really, to replace his production. Obviously, a little bit of replacing DJ Wanham as well, but it's really to replace Danielle Hunter. And I think they were smart in realizing we don't have to go big game hunting in order to replace this behemoth that we have had on the outside. So I echo everything you go with there.
Can I put
Jordan, I want to hear from you. Yeah, go ahead.
So I was actually going to propose, because I didn't want to get into this rhythm of like you pitch a question, me and Dustin give an opinion, and then you have to give an abbreviated one.
No, that's fine.
So let me pitch a question so that way you can give a full opinion. So I don't talk so much, because I talk a lot. It's a big flaw. But I want to know what you guys think, and this is kind of out of left field, but it kind of fits into the outline of, acquisitions and things like that. A big acquisition the Vikings had was Aaron Jones. And I want to know, this can kind of be a speed round. I mean, I don't think we need to sit here and discuss a 1-year running back contract for 20 minutes, but I'm a little disappointed that the Vikings didn't try to find the next Dalvin Cook or the next, I don't want to say Adrian Peterson because AP was AP, but they didn't try to find that running back of the future. They kind of put a Band-Aid over the running back position in a year that I don't think they have expectations to do anything. So I was kind of disappointed that they didn't bring in more young guys and kind of give Ty Chandler a shot, because if the run game doesn't pick up this year, who cares? Sam Darnold's probably playing quarterback all season, and who knows if he's going to be any good. I mean, he's never been good for an entire season as a starter. So, I want to know what you guys thought of that. Did you guys want them to go in a different direction? Dustin, we'll start with you. What do you think of it? And kind of tacking onto it, do you think there's a chance he comes back for a second season with the Vikings, or do you think this is just a pit stop?
When I saw that news, I think it was woke up on March 14th, the day after legal tampering. It was Aaron Jones. My initial reaction from a fantasy football brain and then a quasi-analytics brain is, oh, God, we went and got the old running back. I remember that he looked great in December because the Vikings played him, and then that game where they beat the crap out of the Cowboys, I was like, all right, well, yeah, he's still good. So the moment of, or the week of, I really wasn't too enthused by it because it's an old running back. It's going to be 30 in December. What are we doing? This is not Moneyball. What are we thinking, Quasi? But as the months have gone by, I realized why they did it, and therefore I like it. They have to fix this running game. and they could have been tempted to say, hey, we're going to roll a Ty Chandler. We'll go draft Braylon Allen, who this guy wanted. And then, of course, we got Myles Gaskin and the gang sitting at RB3. And that would have been fine with me. But I think with Aaron Jones, it gives them a commodity that is proven. And when he's available, he didn't look washed at all, like last year, like Dalvin Cook did. So the most telling point of that acquisition is that although it's not realistic the Vikings are going to go win a Super Bowl for guys like us talking about it, if Kevin O'Connell or Kwesi Adofo-Mensah stumbled upon this show and heard like, hey, the Vikings probably know they're going 7-10 this year, they'd probably point and laugh because that is not how coaching staffs and players operate. They're not Egan chilling saying, boys, 7-10, 8-9 this year, this is a transformational season. Like I say, they're not thinking that. So they went and got Aaron Jones, to fix the run game with a bona fide solution per his career production. And I like that. They have to get out of this doldrums of 27th in DVOA in back-to-back seasons on the ground. Kevin O'Connell won't be employed for very long if they keep just scraping the bottom, rushing the ball. And I think that internally right now, it doesn't matter that they changed a bunch of stuff this offseason, that the rookie quarterback is going to be eased in. They're going to go compete for the division, and they're going to tell their players, like, hey, this is not some pit stop season. This isn't flyover country. And, hey, we got Aaron Jones here. This guy didn't come just to hang out for a 6-11 year. So I enjoy that, at least in their estimation, that they're going to be competitive and sneaky good inside the NFC North. And ultimately, that's what we want to see. I have a sneaking suspicion this year is going to be a lot like 2014, where even though they finished 7-9 with Teddy Bridgewater this year, we were happy about it. Like it wasn't a bad version of 7-9. Bridgewater looked the part that year. We went into 2015 with a lot of optimism. They went and won the division the year after that. So I didn't initially like the Aaron Jones move mainly because of age, but I've warmed up to it because I have been calling for a running game fix for quite some time, and this is a lot better than giving Alexander Madison the benefit of the doubt last year.
Will, what do you think?
Fantastic answer. You stole a lot of the things I was going to say. However, I do want to double down on something you did say, that my eyebrows raised, Jordan, when you said a season with low expectations or something thereabouts. Because I think the Vikings believe they are going to outperform those expectations. And I also think this is maybe a sneak preview for what we're going to talk about at the end of how much we can expect as fans and as media personalities, if you want to be that generous with our, titles of ourselves. I think this team has the ingredients to outperform expectations. I don't necessarily think they're going to win 12 games. I'm not going to be that ridiculous, but this is a really good roster. And I think Donald and his coaching staff and Kwesi and his staff, I think they know that. And I think so when you bring in someone like Aaron Jones, it's to bolster a team that they believe is good. So I think there's a lot of belief in the building and Egan, if you will. The last thing I will say too, I like the Aaron Jones move because I think the team really likes Ty Chandler. If we go back 7 months ago to November, maybe even a little bit earlier, when Madison was struggling and was not the burst that I think we all hoped he would be, who were we all clamoring for? We were all clamoring for Ty Chandler. And to some degree, that hope and belief, he proved it out in his opportunities. That Cincinnati game sticks out. He was fantastic that day. But he had some good moments, and I think sometimes as fans and as just outside observers, we get sucked into this mentality that players sort of are what they were, and like they're not necessarily going to be better or worse. It's just kind of like, well, we know what Jefferson's going to be. But we actually don't. Like with Ty Chandler, his growth from year 1 to year 2 clear and dramatic. And who's to say that his growth from year 2 to year 3 with hopefully more of an emphasis on the running game, and now you get another veteran in here who's done it before, who's had playoff success to help him. And ideally, there is a respect of the elder statesman in Aaron Jones from Ty Chandler, but I would be very certain that he's going to be gunning for that starting running back job. Ty Chandler, that is. So I think having Aaron Jones on your team not only helps bolster the running back room, but I also think it might bring out more of Ty Chandler that we haven't necessarily seen yet. So I think in general, there's a lot of good to that move. Is Aaron Jones going to give you 1,400 yards and 11 touchdowns? Probably not. If he does, that'd be fantastic. But I don't think that's the point. I think the point is to have sort of a two-headed, I don't even know if I can call it a monster yet, but a two-headed approach from the backfield.
We'll call it a two-headed creature.
On Ty Chandler, I like him too, and I would have been one of the guys that would have been content if they had rolled with him at RB1 and then found a way to get Trey Benson or Braylon Allen. But one thing about Ty Chandler, I want to point out, the time is now for that guy. He's 26. He got a late start. When the Vikings drafted him, he was 24, and some running backs, Braylon Allen was 20 when he was drafted. So we're talking about like this 3 or 4 year gap to the norm. So if Chandler does end up getting a lot of carries this year, he's in his career prime, like year right now as a running back. And then B, he doesn't have a whole lot of time to be like the guy because he's 26. And so I want to point that out, that age is always awkward for Chandler. And I'm glad that we could see inklings that, hey, this guy's actually good if he can carve up the Bengals like he did. Although they wouldn't give him the ball on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 in that damn game. Chandler is up against a ticking clock, whereas most running backs that we'd be talking about in this vein would be about 23 or 24. No, this guy's 26, older than Alexander Madison.
That's so crazy that he's older than I should have known question. I was... Oh, go ahead.
You finish your random tangent thought. Go ahead.
I should have known I was going to get grilled when I said, like, yeah, the Vikings are like, we probably won't be very good this year. And I should have known that you two were just going to be like, the Vikings think they're always going to be good. Like, it would not shock me one bit if there has been a conversation between Kwesi and the Wilfs where he's like, hey, don't fire me or Kevin for this season. This is our 1 year where we get a do-over. And, you can say we handled some things poorly or we, blah, blah, blah. But, like, we get to see 2025 because Cousins is leaving and, we're bringing in the new guy and we're doing a bunch of turnover and blah, blah, blah. It's a whole new team. We have to see how this is going to go. So, but I should have known I was going to get grilled for that one. So, rightfully so. The Vikings have, like, the power of positivity front office at this point. So, I should understand that that's what it is.
It definitely is part of the Vikings brand, right? Like the Wilfs always want to be at least competitive. And I think you've talked about this, Dustin. The Vikings in our, at least recent past have never really sucked. There's never really been a season where they just intentionally were just trying to get a good draft pick the next year.
Yeah, it's been over 10 years since there have been putrid teams, and those were fallout of the Ponder era. And so it's more than just I believe the coaching staff is going to convince these 53 guys that they can make the playoffs. This is the Vikings brand. They're basically the Steelers without the championships. They're always going to be there and hope to be at least 9-8. And then get frisky in the dance. I mean, you can debate whether or not that's good, but this is the way the Vikings do it. And we know for the extension of our fandoms that sometimes when you think, hey, like even in 2015, I didn't think they were going to go 11-5, win the division, and then they did. So they'll find a way to surprise you, especially if you have low expectations.
As someone who lives in the middle of Steelers country, like a lot of Steelers fans down here, they hate that they're always good. They hate it. They're happy they have all the titles. I know people that think Mike Tomlin is the worst coach in the NFL.
I've always wondered that.
Yeah, they like some of them. I mean, some of them are like the casual, like the diehard fans that I know hate that they're always good, but they're never good enough. And they'll always, just they're like, can we just tank and get like a Caleb Williams or Shadell Sanders or something like that? Like, why are we signing Justin Fields and Russell Wilson to be our quarterbacks? Like, can we, go back a little bit and just suck for a couple years? And yeah, they want the suck.
Ungrateful people. They've won 2 Super Bowls in the last 20 years. Get over yourselves.
It's like the big Boston drought of championships. 5 long years, bitches.
I saw some tweet yesterday after the Celtics finished off the Mavericks in the NBA Finals that if you are under the age of 32, the Minnesota sports fan has never seen a men's championship in that time period. So I'm under 32, so I've never seen a men's championship. Mm-hmm. If you are under 32 as a Boston sports fan, you have seen 13.
Good night.
So think about that.
I'm telling you, I think about this frequently. It has to change, and based on mathematics, the law of averages, it should come in a flurry. Whether that's the Twins, Wild, it is very weird that we've had this drought. I think I've said on the show before, maybe not this show. 1991 World Series is what hooked me as a sports fan for my entire life. I was watching it in our living room, and I was 7. Yeah, he just turned 8. And Kirby Puckett sent the series to Game 7. And I remember when he hit that home run, I felt something jump inside my stomach as a kid, and I didn't know the TV could make me feel like that. And that's the moment I was hooked to sports forever. No clue that would be the end of Minneapolis teams winning it all. But I'm telling you that they've got all the biggies in terms of NHL, NBA, MLB, and NFL. They're going to win one, and probably to make the world right, it's probably going to be, oh my God, the Wild won, and then 2 years later the Twins win one. It's probably going to go like that.
Can we stop saying the Wild and the Twins? I really don't. I hate to piss off the fans of the show that are in Minnesota. I don't care about the Wild and the Twins. I've never seen my favorite team in anything win a title. Like, I grew up a Pacers fan because they're 2 hours away, and Cincinnati doesn't have a team. So Pacers, nothing. Blue Jackets, historically terrible. The Vikings, LOL. And then what's the other spot? The Reds. The Reds haven't won a World Series in 33 years, and I'm 26. So never even sniffed it, man. I mean, I've seen some championship games. I think the Jackets have won 1 playoff series. I mean, screw the Wild and the Twins. I want a Vikings championship, and I want it in 2025. Or 2026 is when the Super Bowl would be played. Come on, man.
So on the topic of championships, what do they say? Defense wins championships. Mm-hmm. So Jordan, how much better or worse, I suppose, do you feel the Vikings defense will be this year compared to last?
I think Dustin has been hinting almost every time we've had him on since the season ended. He's kind of been hinting at this. The Vikings are going to be better than what people think narrative, and not 12-win team, but they're going to compete, and they're going to compete hard. I think if the Vikings are going to compete with Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy as their quarterback this season, you're going to see the defense be the reason why they are in these games, and you're going to see Brian Flores. He had that month and a half stretch last season where it was like, holy crap, this defense is good. And then people started getting injured. And
it was weeks 4 through 14.
Yeah, okay, so it was a 10-week stretch. So, 2.5 months. He had that long stretch, and then injuries caught up, lack of personnel. He had to blitz everybody all the time. It was unorthodox, and the league caught up with it. But I think you could see with a legitimate pass rush, the cornerbacks getting another year to develop a little bit. Harrison Smith is actually, I'm afraid, my biggest question mark this season is is there a cliff coming for him? And so I will be interested to see how that goes. And if there is a cliff, do the Vikings consider hey, he's not very good, he's going to be a rotational guy now? And do they consider doing that to a legend like that? I don't think they would, but I'm very interested to see what the defense is going to do. I think we kicked the show off talking about the pass rush. It's probably the most important thing the Vikings did this offseason if the goal is to win championships. I know J.J. McCarthy's the sexy thing to talk about, but having the pass rush that they could have, all of this is in a simulation, all of this is on paper with no snaps being taken yet. that's what is going to win you the championship, is the ability to get after an opposing quarterback late in a game, third down and long, force a punt, force them to go for it in an awkward position. I really think that this defense could be the reason that we're talking about the playoffs in Minnesota, come late November, mid-December. If we win one and they lose two and, blah, 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 getting into all those types of dances. I think it's going to have to be the defense. And I think it's there. I want to see it. I don't want to just proclaim it's going to be great. But, Dustin, I'm interested in your thoughts. I think a really underrated signing was Blake Cashman, who's going to be coming in. I think he is a tremendous middle linebacker. I'm interested in what you think, of him and Pace kind of playing, the linebacking spots. I know it's linebackers, though not the sexiest defensive position to talk about. I feel like we have to at least point it out. Do you think that with all the additions that were made, basically copy-pasting the Houston Texans defense, can they make the playoffs as a defensive team? Should we have brought Mike Zimmer back for a year?
If the division wasn't so damn brutal, I would, pound my fist right now and say, hell yes. But this division got so good so quick, especially if Caleb Williams lives up to his draft stock. Blake Cashman, I love it. A, because of the Eden Prairie angle, that's where I went to high school. And B, he's perfect for this defense and his coverage niche. It's kind of the anti-Jordan. I mean, Jordan Hicks wasn't bad at coverage. But the things that the Vikings linebacking core lacked last year, boom, Blake Cashman has it. So on the defense, hopefully this stat isn't too intricate. Between weeks 1 and 3 last year, per defensive EPA per play, expected points added. Weeks 1 through 3, the Vikings ranked 26th in the NFL. Not good. You could feel it in your bones. Like after the Chargers game, this defense ain't it. Weeks 4 through 14, they ranked 1st in the NFL per the same stat, EPA per play. And week 15 showed up, and through weeks 15 through 17, they ranked 31st. So it truly was a roller coaster. But we saw that Flores has in his DNA and the defense's DNA to be good for the bulk of the season, right in the middle of it. I'm not sure if I said this stat last time I was on. When Brian Flores took over as the head coach for the Dolphins in 2019, that defense ranked 32nd in the NFL per EPA per play. 1 year later, he got his guys. When the 2020 season ended, they ranked 7th. So they climbed from 32 to 7th. Now, you take that precedent, that resume from Flores, and let's see, I don't have the EPA memorized from last year, but the DVOA, they ranked 11th. And I think that the EPA per play was more towards the middle. Well, if he could do it in Miami, he can do it here. Plus, he has more personnel. Even though they lost to Neil Hunter, he got to be the grocery shopper, I believe, this time. They got Dallas Turner. They went and got Shaquille Griffin for the leadership angle. They've got a lot of battles on this defense coming up at edge rusher, cornerback, safety's got 7 guys now with Najee Thompson switching. So he has the personnel. He has the track record of improving in his second year. And I will continue to say this on every show that I'm on, talking about the angle of the Vikings being sneaky good. I swear to God it's going to happen that Sam Darnold is going to play good because it's a Vikings football thing to happen. He's going to play good, like probably post Kirk Cousins stats, and then we're going to have 35% of the fan base that doesn't want to see McCarthy because Darnold's good. How can we let this guy go out the door? We're going to have that debate. Now, I don't really like Sam Darnold. When he came out of college, I never really saw it on the tape that he would be 3rd overall. Got to New York, wasn't good. Got to the Panthers, was only decent, and then hardly played for the 49ers. But I'm telling you, it is a Vikings football thing for that guy to be good. Be a reclamation project with the Vikings. Randall Cunningham, Jeff Jordan, they all come to the Vikings to show what they've got. And it's going to make it really complicated for when McCarthy sees the field because Darnold's going to be too good to bench.
I think there's a lot of truth in that. I also think this discussion sort of delves into another topic that I think is really interesting in this is how much we can trust the quarterbacks that we have on the roster, right? For the last 6 years, it's been, you might not love Kirk Cousins, but it's clear who's QB1, and it's clear that there's going to be a baseline of performance, and he's going to keep you in most games, and you're probably going to be in the playoff hunt, as long as the defense does enough. With this iteration of the Vikings, you got 4 guys that you don't really know what to make of. You've got gunslinging Nick Mullins, who at some points looks like Patrick Mahomes and at other times looks like Johnny Manziel. And then you've got rookie JJ McCarthy, who's just a mystery box at this point. And then, of course, there's Sam Darnold. He's hopefully, the 2024 version of last year's Baker Mayfield. And then Jaron Hall, who, similar to JJ McCarthy, we don't really know what he is. He had one start that looked horrible last year, but we don't really know what he is. From your guys' perspective, probably the most interesting ones to think about would be, obviously, Darnold and McCarthy. We're hopefully not going to see much of Nick Mullins, and Hall is probably going to be on the practice squad. So, from your perspective, do you trust either of those top two guys? Like, looking into this season, do you feel like these guys can keep you in games, win you some games? Or does it sort of feel like hang on for dear life, ultimately tank by week 12?
I think it's got to be. I don't think they're tanking by any means, but I with Sam Darnold, I think no, you can't trust Sam Darnold. I mean, obviously you can't trust Sam Darnold. He's never proven that he is trustworthy. It's like a credit score. He has no credit. Actually, I would argue he has bad credit at this point. He has 3 maxed out credit cards, and he is now, applying for a home loan. No, that's not how that works. You've got like a 220 credit score, my brother. Like at least JJ McCarthy's just flat zeros because he's, never done anything. But with McCarthy, I have an interesting analogy that I want to throw out there. And, I like that you called him a mystery box. It almost hits it on the head. And I want to take it to like the video game aspect of things and call him a loot box. Because video games have added these things called loot boxes. The quick description of them is they're gambling. They're a slot machine baked into Call of Duty. And basically what it is you hit A or X or whatever, and it gives you random things, and you don't know what's in them. There might be something really good in there. It might just be a bunch of common nonsense that you're going to never use. And so a lot of states have been like, hey, video games can't do loot boxes because it's just gambling for children. And I think JJ McCarthy right now is just gambling for podcasts because we don't know, right? Like, we have no idea what he's going to be. I think he's going to be good. I put him, I think, at 5 at the beginning of the season last year in my top 5 QBs the Vikings should be looking at. And then after the season, I think I put him at 3 or 4 because I was like, yeah, he had a good year, and I think he had won an Addy at that point. And I was like, look, he's got some things that you want to work on, but he's like 20. He's going to be 21. He's super young. I would love to see what O'Connell could do with him. But at the end of the day, the guy could absolutely stink. I have no idea. I think he's got a really low flow. And I think some people say his ceiling is like Alex Smith or Kirk Cousins. I think it's much, much higher than that. I really do think he could be a top 3 quarterback in the NFL with the physical traits that he has. Dustin, because you talk to people and you know a little bit, Mo. I want to poke at you a little bit. Have you heard anything from inside anywhere? Have you turned over any stones and found any interesting JJ McCarthy nuggets? Can you bake that into, you see what I did there, Dustin Baker? Can you bake that into your response to how much you can trust McCarthy or Sam Darnold?
Yeah, I got a couple folks that I utilize. They were the ones, remember that first Timberwolves playoffs game when Justin Jefferson was there? And I think I tweeted that Justin Jefferson's deal is basically done. One of the sources maintains the deal was done then, and it was just waiting until June to announce it. And then there was another one who told me that the white helmets were coming. So this guy knows his stuff. The good part is he hasn't said anything negative about McCarthy, and the stuff that he has hinted is basically what Kevin Seifert has said from ESPN, or even the Vikings coaching staff being open and honest about the guy looks like a rookie. That's what he's supposed to look like. So I don't have any pristine intel that says, oh, this guy looks a lot better than people are saying. But the takeaway is that he doesn't look awful, because that's really the only thing that you don't want to hear is, oh, man, this guy sucks. And I want to go back to talking about the quarterback part. All of that Darnold stuff that I said, I'm telling you, that is a Vikings narrative. It is not me thinking that Sam Darnold is just going to be badass because he's Sam Darnold. No, this is what would happen to the Vikings that wouldn't happen to Sam Darnold. So I'll stand by those comments, but it's a reserved for the Vikings thing. However, the last time that Sam Darnold played and started, he played 6 games in 2022 for the Panthers. The Panthers went 4-2 on his watch. And per EPA per play, Sam Darnold ranked 5th in the NFL behind Mahomes, Tua, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, then Sam Darnold. So the last time he played a decent sample size, 6 games, he was pretty good. I don't know. I can't remember why the Panthers didn't keep him. Probably because it was the start of Bryce Young era and whatnot. But the guy was at least efficient when he last played. On McCarthy, here's what I'm going to say. The good news is when he does take the baton, and I wish there was no Sam Darnold on this team. I wish McCarthy would just play week 1 and we would do it like the Texans did it. But I don't run the team, so Darnold it is. The Vikings have 2 cornerstone offensive tackles. They have Justin Jefferson. They have Jordan Addison. They'll have T.J. Hawkinson back. They have an offense-first head coach who was a quarterback. Everything is in place for McCarthy or any guy from this last draft to succeed. So we're going to know within 3 or 4 years if McCarthy, if he's not that good or he's just completely like, oh yeah, he does some good things, or we're arguing about him constantly. He has everything in place to succeed. So it's not going to be some deal like the Patriots have where that fan base can scream to high heavens, well, look, hey, their number 1 receiver was K.J. Osborne and Devontae Parker. I don't even know if he plays there anymore. They're not going to have excuses. The Vikings are, because they have everything for McCarthy to succeed. So I'm glad that we will get a clear verdict before too long because there won't be any excuses. It's tailor-made for any quarterback to be inserted. So I'm excited for it. I put out a poll just for the moment earlier this morning that you as the fan, if you were in charge of the team, would you start Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy? I was stunned. Like 84% of people had said Sam Darnold. That's who they would start in week 1. And I get it. That has been baked again into our Minnesotan psyche that Darnold's going to be the guy. But I'm surprised that there aren't more like me that would just rather have McCarthy in week 1, assuming he's not a total moron, and just let it ride. It really shocked me. I thought we'd be closer to like 60-40 in favor of Darnold.
Hey, well, he's not a moron. He's studying with his fiance Katya, which is the most badass name for a fiance ever. Like,
no, I tend to agree with you, Dustin. I am not of the mindset that sitting behind Sam Darnold and Nick Mullins and watching and trying to osmosis your way into being a good quarterback is necessarily the right approach. Now, you can convince me that JJ is really young. He just turned 21 and all those things. So, I can get behind that. But I believe experience is probably a better teacher than sitting and watching, especially when you have a good supporting cast around you. If you're getting thrown in like Bryce Young last year, it might have done him some good to sit behind Andy Dalton and just watch what Andy Dalton did to sort of avert chaos and avoid disaster, because Bryce Young had no chance all year. But I think this would be a different situation. So I have the amount of football knowledge that Kevin O'Connell has in his pinky toe, so I don't think that I can necessarily question that, but I agree with you. I would go about it a different way.
The other weird thing about Sam Darnold, and I'm guilty of this too, is envisioning a Baker Mayfield-like season where he's rejuvenated and this was the guy we thought he was going to be. The only problem with that is Baker Mayfield was good. Sam Darnold has never been good. Baker Mayfield as a rookie threw 27 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. He was well on his way to being the next big thing per Cleveland speak. And then, lo and behold, they won a postseason game in 2020. And then I remember thinking about, gosh, when's that guy going to cash in on a big deal? And then it just became completely, that guy ain't going to work here anymore. We're going to go get Deshaun Watson. So the only thing that I'll tell people to pump the brakes on is we love this Baker Mayfield narrative. But Baker Mayfield was quite good at one point, and Sam Darnold has never been good.
Yeah, I definitely think that's fair. I don't want to close it because this is a fun show and I love having Dustin on and I love picking your brain, but maybe stout to bring things down. And I know we've kind of danced around it. I don't think we've actually officially said what out. we kind of did this. We looked at the schedule. We didn't do a game by game pick 'em. We're not going to do that until late August probably. But Dustin, when you look at the schedule, you look at the way it's formatted. I want to know how many W's do you see on that schedule as we sit here in mid to late June? And also, is there a stretch of the schedule? And if you need to pull the schedule up, I apologize. I know this is putting you on the spot, and I don't expect you to have all 18 games memorized. Is there a stretch where you say, yeah, it's Dustin flipping Bako, man. I mean, it's the Catalina fucking wine mixer. But is there a stretch where you say, this seems like a good place to put McCarthy in? This seems like the Vikings will stumble, need a change. They'll put McCarthy in. If it's favorable for him, blah, blah, blah. I know we discussed that a couple weeks ago on the show. I kind of want to pick you on it and see, what do you think?
I can tell you that everybody thinks that it should be Week 7 against the Lions at home after the bye. I think Ben Lieber said that. I think Wes Johnson on Vikings territory said that seems like the ideal time because based on the Murderers Row part of the schedule to start the season, they're probably going to be something like 1-5 or whatever it is. And then you might as well, TJ Hawkinson could be back that week. That's the sexy theory. I have to try to marry this to my Darnold theory that this guy's going to be good just because Vikings football mandates it. I think it would be later on, like November, December. The schedule, first of all, I don't like the Giants game on the road because we're already looking ahead as fans, like, oh my God, after the Giants, then you got to play all these playoff teams. The Giants aren't going to suck, and even when they're mid, they play the Vikings like gangbusters. And so I'm nervous that if they don't beat the Giants, which is a road game, it's not going to be easy. Then you're staring down something horrendous like 1-5 or 0-6. So I don't like the way the schedule is staggered. But then again, I'm also like you guys that I don't have huge expectations. So if we have to have this nasty schedule, we might as well get it out of the way this year. There is a stretch where the Vikings play 3 road games in a row, which is really weird against AFC teams. Those AFC teams, I believe, are the Titans, Jaguars, and then there's one other. Then they come home to play the Kirk game. They play the Cardinals, and I think it's the Colts. And I don't have those in the correct order.
I think the Colts are before the Jags and the Titans, because I think that's when I want to put him in. Is because it's like right after the Thursday night game, and I'm like, yeah, he gets a mini bye, and then he gets to go play the AFC South. Go gangbusters, kid! Like, go get him! Like,
yeah, that part of the schedule is when it actually softens up. There was one of these last year. I remember talking about it a lot. Like, if they can get over the hump, I think it was after the 49ers game is when things really start to soften up, and that's exactly when it softened up. That's when Dobbs Mania happened. This time, we have a more Murderers Row in those first 7 weeks. And then like the only non-playoff team that's in there after the Giants is Aaron Rodgers' Jets. It's quite hilarious. So I would say sometime around Thanksgiving. I just have a feeling the Vikings are going to do the Viking thing and nibble at 500 for most of the year. Like, this is what happens in a year where they don't look very competitive. They're probably going to do the customary, like, oh my God, the Vikings are 6-6. And then this is right about the time the ESPN playoff machine comes out and I start looking at all the scenarios. I do it every year. And it's almost the same thing outside of 2017 where I'm either thinking, all right, if the Cardinals lose this game, the 49ers lose that one, the Vikings can do this. I have a feeling they're going to do that again this year because I remember doing it in 2014 when they weren't supposed to be that good, but they were right there in the mix. Now, again, I would start McCarthy in week 1 because this is the way that we can try to do it now. The Texans did it. Some of the stuff about, hey, McCarthy's bouncing some throws to wide receivers. He looks exactly like a rookie. That's what C.J. Stroud did last summer, too. And he ended up starting, and it worked. So if it were left up to me, I would start McCarthy, but I know that won't happen.
Well, what do you think? I know we've already discussed this. Do you have any updates?
We've already talked the McCarthy thing. I think without talking about it too much deeper, I think I tend to agree with you, Jordan. I like that Indy game. But again, it hinges on how well you're doing. If you're in 5, then by all means. But if you got 3 or 4 wins, then, let it ride. So I think I'll leave the McCarthy talk at that. But I look at this schedule and I think there's maybe a little bit of a fool's errand in looking at every single game and predicting win, loss, loss, win, win, like going game by game, because the games always end up different than you think, but the standings always are sort of what you thought. Um, because you get a team like the Browns beating the 49ers and the Vikings beating the 49ers, but then the 49ers still end up in the Super Bowl like everybody thought they were going to. So rather than going game by game, I kind of look at this schedule holistically, and I honestly kind of see a possibility for 8 or 9 wins, and you get frisky, maybe even get to 10. I'm not gonna like stamp my prediction on that, because I could also see a world where they go 6-11 and it's just kind of bad the entire way. Um, but I think one thing that maybe I'll sort of close for my final thoughts on this show and sort of how I'm approaching this, last 6 weeks before training camp is, and I said it earlier, I think this team believes in itself. I think this team is going to rely on, maybe some fringe players on the roster outperforming their salt a little bit. Kruger Hill is one that I'm not super sold on, but it seems to be, going to be getting a sizable role in the linebacking core. I'm not convinced by the cornerbacks, just like we haven't been for the last 6 years. But I also think if some of those things hit, along with the things that we believe to be more sure things, like the offensive skill position players and the edge depth and some of those things we've already talked about. And what do you know? And maybe you get someone like Will Reichard just making every single kick possible and gives you the Blair Walsh rookie year experience. I could see this team outperforming expectations, and I wouldn't be terribly shocked by it. And I think that's how this team views itself. So again, I'm hesitant by a few things. I'm hesitating a little bit because I'm not certain of a few different position groups, a few different things that they are going to rely on. But I think this team's going to be frisky. I think this team is going to be fun, which I think is maybe something that we haven't had a whole lot of in the Kirk Cousins era, because I think there was this weight of expectations with the Kirk Cousins era that, okay, we made the NFC Championship game in 2017. Why aren't we getting back there? 2022 was fun because it was sort of this magical, every single win was a walk-off win, it felt like, and it was just crazy for, 5 months. But I think this team is going to be fun in the way that, maybe a team like Detroit was a couple of years ago, and they surprised everybody and were knocking on the door of the playoffs and had all the swagger in the world. So I don't know. I'm intrigued. I've had family members, friends ask me, late last season and then going into this season, like, is this team still as fun to cover and talk about as it was in 2022? And I would say by all means, and maybe even more so because of all the different storylines and all the different what ifs and excitable things that this roster and coaching staff does possess. So I think it's going to be a fantastic year in that way.
Absolutely. Dustin, we'll kick it to you to do final thoughts. Doesn't have to be football related. I have to give you the spiel every time. It's tradition at this point. I'm sure you're going to keep it football related, but the finals did just wrap up. I know we talked about some basketball and some nonsense before the show, so if you want to talk about nonsense, go ahead, but if you want to give a final football take before you go away from Load the Box for a while, the floor is yours.
Yeah, there's two things. When Will was talking about team being more frisky than some lead on, this is a funny example of how consistent Vikings football is of being relevant. So Yannick Eckhart, who writes for Vikings Territory and is now the head boss at purpleptsd.com, he comes to my house every Christmas to hang out for 6 weeks, and then he comes to all the Vikings games with me. And the schedule came out, and I was talking to him about, hey, when are you gonna come? I was like, are you gonna come in September, October? Are you gonna come for December and January and stay for the playoffs? And he was like, you really think the Vikings are going to the playoffs? And I was like, oh shit, that's right. This isn't really a playoff team. I'm so used to the Vikings at least being in the mix to get to the postseason that it was just ingrained in me. Like, are you going to come in case they get in the playoffs, right? Like, and I didn't even think about, oh my god, no, this is a team that's probably mid. They're only going to be like 7-10 or something like that. So it's really a part of the Vikings culture to be relevant, at least good. My other closing argument, I saw this when I was in Norway. Justin Jefferson completed his deal a little over 2 weeks ago. And when he had that press conference, I can't remember the exact quote. I should have written it down for the purposes of the show. He said something to the effect and used the words, my team. And I don't remember him being that emphatic about ownership of the team when Kirk Cousins was here. Now, I enjoyed Kirk Cousins, and I still enjoy Kirk Cousins. But it was really cool to see the team's keynote superstar, the richest non-quarterback in history, step up and say, you know, this. He said something like, "This is my team now," and it struck a chord with me because Cousins never really said like, "Hey, this is my team, bitch, get out of the way." He never said that ever because that wasn't his personality. But with the natural pivot point away from Cousins, Jefferson has taken it upon himself to call this his team. And until we figure out if McCarthy is good, he can continue to do that. So I thought that was cool. Right now in Minnesota sports, we kind of have, Anthony Edwards. That's the Wolves. That's his team. And now we have Jefferson. That's his team. So I think it's really cool that Jefferson has taken that leadership mantle because not every wide receiver is like that. He's not just going to say, climb on my back. I'm the leader. There's a lot of these wide receivers, as we know, that are, flamboyant, and Jefferson, it really isn't that. So yeah, I look forward to coming back with you guys in a month or so. That'll be knocking on the door of training camp, probably a couple days right before it. And I'm still leaning at about 7-10, and I'll talk myself into an 8-9 record for these Vikings. I would love to think I'm right about the Sam Darnold. He's going to be really good, or McCarthy. But I think if I say anything more than 8-9, then I'm just being a homer.
Let's all agree to get to a point where we can, with straight faces, come July, say the Vikings are going to win 10 games. I don't care how we get there. I don't know if we've got to go do a darkness retreat, maybe experiment with what was the stuff that Rodgers did, like ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like whatever we got to do to get to 10 wins. Let's agree that we're all going to be we're going to be the idiots that after the Vikings win 5 games, we can be the ones that people point at and be like, oh, the Vikings fans, those idiots and no homos, and then we can dunk on them by showing them this clip. But
no, I have fans that come on my YouTube show every Friday. I usually try to have 2 or 3, and it blows my mind how many of them are like, I ask them the record prediction. They're like, probably about 11-6, and I'm like, what? like they were talking themselves down from 12-5.
Right.
Yeah, I'm like, well, sweet, we'll take it. But they're out there. I'm telling you,
that's the beauty of this time of year, and I think it was Mike Florio who Mike Florio takes a lot of crap. I love Mike Florio. Okay, I don't care what you people think, but Mike Florio said something a few years ago. He was like, every team after the draft during OTAs has a path to the Super Bowl, and then games get played in September, and every team 16 to 18 of them are like, oh crap, no we don't. Like, what were we smoking back in April or May? And so I love that every team.
And the other part is individual players. Like, there's 91 of them on the team right now. You can be looking at a depth chart, or in my case, looking for something to write for the day, and you could talk yourself into the upside of every single guy. Like, maybe Levi Drake, maybe everybody was right about Levi Drake Rodriguez, and he's going to start week 1. This is the time on the calendar where you can get rosy about all 90 guys, even if you've never heard of them until a couple weeks ago. You can start to say, you know what, that Ty James, I bet you he's WR3. Like,
don't do it. Don't do it. I've done it, all right? I've done it with all these offensive linemen, defensive tackles, defensive back, all these guys. I did it with Andre Carter last year. There's a piece of me that's like, yeah, Andre Carter's going to be the best pass rusher in the NFL within the next 2 seasons. That's just how it's, if there's one thing I know about the NFL, it's like the NBA. If you're over 6'8", you automatically are good. No, it's okay for him to just be a UDFA who got a chance and didn't work out. Ivan Pace is the exception, not the standout, if you want to call it that. But my final thoughts, I'll keep them short and sweet because we're almost done. Shop Unified. Make sure you follow the show at LTB Vikings. Make sure you follow Will at Will Badlose and check out the Bad Loser blog. Make sure you're checking out VikingsTerritory.com and PurplePTSD.com. And then Dustin, I don't want to mess up your socials. I know, like, Vikes now, obviously on YouTube. I'm sure if someone's watching this show, you're probably sub to him. Make sure you are. If you're not, sub to this show too. But Vikes now, where can the people find you on Twitter or X?
Yeah,
what's your X handle?
Just at Dust Baker. It's been that way for about 5-6 years now. And then, I write every day, all day on VikingsTerritory.com.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Both of the gentlemen above me absolutely crush it when they put digital keyboard to digital paper and write articles or type articles, whatever. But when they put their minds to it or when they put their effort into it, it's really good content and it's really good stuff. My final thoughts are just going to be, I'm going to keep it in football, but I'm going to go to kind of talking on what Dustin was talking about. What, like, our expectations. I almost started asking you guys a question because I don't want this show to be over. Getting into, like, expectations for players, I think we all need to, like, realize that we have a bad case of, like, not watching football. And we all think that every draft pick is going to be a Hall of Famer. And we all think, specifically the first round guys, I'm going to make a prediction that one of the Vikings first round draft picks will not be on the team in 5 years. And I don't know if it's going to be Dallas Turner or J.J. McCarthy, but I have a weird feeling it's going to be J.J. McCarthy because that just seems like I like him too much. So it seems like it's going to be him. But I think even if one of them isn't, I think that this draft will still be looked at as a success because you took the two guys. I think one of them's going to be really good and one of them's going to be so-so and not on a second contract with the Vikings. I think he'll go elsewhere. And I think that's okay sometimes. I think that we put too much in, like, oh, if the Vikings miss on the QB of the future, then everybody has to get fired and everybody sucks at their jobs and everything's terrible. The Vikings can have good seasons if they have good defensive depth, if they have good skill positions and a good run game. A good offensive line, I think, is a little bit more important. And I think that we've gotten too brainwashed into thinking it's Patrick Mahomes or bust. And I think we need to be okay with, like, hey, if J.J. McCarthy isn't, God in a football jersey, that's okay. And if Dallas Turner ends up being an average pass rusher who we choose not to re-sign, that's also okay. And so I just want to tamper some expectations. I don't know, maybe it's just my algorithms. Everybody's acting like both these guys are locks for the Hall of Fame already. And, like, everybody's acting like, oh my gosh, did you see McCarthy throw this ball? It was beautiful. It was, he's not wearing pads or anything, but it was the best pass I've ever seen. And Dallas Turner looks fast. And it's like, okay, but I want to see him play. I want to see how they look in pads. I want to see how they're learning the playbooks and what they're doing. And, like, I really can't. I don't think we can form true opinions until we see them play real NFL games. So I'm eager for it, but I think we should all just hold back on the expectations. Just maybe understand that draft picks are kind of a crapshoot. We don't know what's going to happen. And, that's where I'll leave my final thoughts. They were a little rambly, not as short and sweet as I wanted. But thank you guys for tuning in. Dustin, as always, we appreciate your time. And we will be back at you guys. We have a really cool video concept that's it's in the oven. We'll get it out soon. Make sure to tune into the socials to find out when that's going to come out. I've been Jeldon. He's been Dustin. He's been Will. I'll leave you guys, as always, with a skull, y'all.
Skull, baby.